Hello, boys and girls. Today we'll be reading Pete the Cat, Too Cool for School by Kimberly and James Dean. Let's meet our author and illustrators, Kimberly and James Dean. Kimberly and James Dean are the authors and illustrators of Pete the Cat, Too Cool for School. James was inspired by his cat, Pete. He painted pictures of Pete the cat for 10 years. Then he and Kimberly came up with the first Pete the Cat book. They continue to write about the amazing Pete the cat. James and Kimberly have 5 cats of their own. Let's learn about how James and Kimberly Dean came up with the idea for Pete the cat.
I didn't really start out with the desire to write a children's book. My father was a self-taught artist, and growing up, Snoopy was my favorite character, and I drew Snoopy all the time. And then when I quit my job when I was 39 years old to go out and try to be an artist. I was an electrical engineer, and I just started drawing. I was living in Athens, Georgia, and I was drawing landscapes and buildings and places people loved in Athens. And one day I drew a picture of my cat, and the next thing I knew, I had this little black cat named Pete. And the next thing I knew, all I was drawing were pictures of my cat, and I made my living doing that. But Kimberly is more the writer, and I think she had been thinking longer about children's books.
Well, I always made up children's stories for my kids when they were little. When I would tuck them in at night, we would make up stories. And so when Pete came into my life, I saw Pete as being great for a children's book. And children got Pete even on an adult level. They related to Pete. They thought he was cool. And I thought how cool it would be if we could share that with children.
It's so interesting to get to learn about authors and illustrators and how they get their ideas. Pete the Cat, Too Cool for School. As you heard, James Dean spent 10 years illustrating pictures of Pete, his real cat. Then his wife Kimberly came up with the stories. Let's see if you recognize some of the collection of stories that James and Kimberly Dean have written about Pete the cat. This is called a series, when authors and illustrators make a bunch of books about the same character. So let's look at some of them. If you have read this story before, you can give a thumbs up. Pete the Cat, Too Cool for School. Pete the Cat, Rockin' in My School Shoes. Pete the Cat and His 4 Groovy Buttons. Pete the Cat and His Magic Sunglasses. Pete the Cat, I Love My White Shoes. You may have read all of these, or maybe just a few. There are even more books about Pete the Cat that you can enjoy if you look them up. Give it a try. Now let's read Pete the Cat, Too Cool for School by Kimberly and James Dean. Pete wants to look cool. He asks everyone, "What should I wear?" "Wear your yellow shirt," his mom says. "It's my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear your red shirt," Pete's friend Marty says. "It's my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear your blue shirt," Pete's brother Bob says. "It's my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear your long pants," Pete's teacher says. "They are my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear the shorts with the fish," Pete's friend Callie says. "They are my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear your polka dot socks," says the bus driver. "They are my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear the cowboy boots," Grumpy Toad says. "They are my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear the tie with stripes," Emma says. "It's my favorite." So Pete does. "Wear your baseball hat," his coach says. "It's my favorite." So Pete does. Pete puts on all the clothes. Does he look cool? No, Pete looks silly. He also feels very hot. Pete goes home. He changes his clothes. Pete puts on his favorite shirt. Pete puts on his favorite pants. Pete puts on his favorite socks. Pete puts on his favorite shoes. Pete puts on his sunglasses. Pete says, "Now I am cool." If you want to be cool, just be you. Was Pete the cat happy when he tried to wear what everyone else liked? No, he was trying to make everybody else happy but himself. What made Pete the cat feel cool? He felt cool when he wore what made him feel happy. I hope you enjoyed Pete the Cat, Too Cool for School.